First up, how exciting. I am here to talk to you today about how storytelling works. Snuggle pot and cuddle pie, goodnight moon, and Harry McClary. When I was 5 years old, my favourite thing in the world was when my mum would tuck me into bed and read me a story. My mum was an excellent storyteller. She would do character voices, she would pause for laughs, and she could navigate rhyming couplets like a pro. But do you know what I remember most about those times? It was actually sharing that nightly ritual with my mum and how close I felt to her sharing that time together. For those moments, I was safe, I was held, and I was connected. There was nothing that our story time couldn't fix. In today's hyper-connected online world, we are increasingly physically disconnected from those around us. And that's actually why storytelling is so vital and so powerful, because stories build bridges for us to empathise, to connect, to relate. To share stories is a fundamental human trait, something that transcends borders and cultures. And our brains are literally wired to cling to narrative. So what makes a good story? Well, I'm here to talk to you about 3 elements that make strong and engaging stories. Structure, colour, and emotion. First things first, structure is everything. Basic narrative structure follows a well-worn path of 3 stages: the setup, overcoming challenges, and the return. So firstly, building a strong setup. Good stories set up a strong character with clear stakes. That means we easily know who we should care about and why it's important for them to succeed. Without knowing what the character has to lose, that is, the stakes, we won't care about what happens to them. Think about a film or television show that grabbed you from the first moment because you could easily get located in the story. I'm thinking Walter White in Breaking Bad. Any Breaking Bad fans? A few. Walter White is this classic, quiet chemistry teacher who turns to drugs to raise money for his family because he's going to be taken by cancer. Fantastic setup with really strong stakes. Step 2, overcoming challenges. This is where the ordinary world of the character is turned upside down and they face insurmountable odds. Here's where the character might just lose everything and has to fight for what they believe in. Think The Big Lebowski, where the dude goes through multiple trials to try and get his beloved rug replaced. Or the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where Frodo and co face multiple challenges before they can destroy the One Ring. The final phase, the return. This is where the character returns to share what they've learned. This is where we see how they've changed because of what they've endured. So an example here would be Inside Out. Has anyone seen Inside Out? A few people? Yeah. So basically what happens at the end of that movie is Joy, who's I think the main character, returns back to headquarters and realises that she needs to completely change the way that she runs things because all emotions are needed. So this structure is actually a simplified version of what mythologist Joseph Campbell calls the monomyth, or the hero's journey, which some of you may be familiar with. I also like to think it's probably the foundation for 90% of Hollywood's movies. This monomyth structure is so ubiquitous that Campbell found it is actually the foundation for stories across all unique cultures around the world. One of the most common mistakes that people make when they're starting with storytelling is to assume that a structure so simple couldn't possibly be engaging. But actually, it is the monomyth's simplicity which is its greatest strength. This story structure is so deeply ingrained in us that we can easily get located in any stories that use it. Think about when you've come into a movie 10 minutes late, but you can still go, oh, okay, that's the character I'm following, that's what they want, and this is what stands in their way. I would guarantee that movie is using the monomyth structure. But I could talk about story structure all day long, for real. So let's move on to the second element of making a good story, which is colour. By which I mean the details in your story. Now, I often think that structure is the thing that drives us forward, so it keeps us moving along a path of action, whereas colour is the thing that takes us laterally. So this is where we go off into our imaginations and we flesh out the world. So compare this example. Number 1, this morning I woke up early and I got out of bed. A series of actions. Example 2. This morning, I was startled awake by the screaming of my alarm. It was so cold that when I touched my nose, it felt like an ice cube. I hit snooze, but 10 minutes later, I was startled again out of bed, and I knew that if I didn't turn that alarm off now, I was going to fall back asleep and miss real big things. So I kicked off the doonas like a Band-Aid and ran down the hallway to the shower, praying that the hot water would be working. So out of these two, which took you off more into seeing pictures and into imagining? I'm going to hope number two. Yeah. Researchers in France have actually discovered that the brain makes little distinction between reading or hearing described actions, as in example 2, and actually doing those actions in real life. Both reading and doing light up similar regions in the brain, which I think is fascinating because it means that when we hear a story, we begin to experience that as our own. Which also explains why stories are more sticky in our brains, because our neurological experience of the story is that it actually kind of becomes our own. And of course, our brain goes, it's about me, so it's important, and then we're more likely to remember it. So the third thing that makes a good story is getting emotional. A story with real emotions is far more interesting than one filled with cliches. And actually, our brains will ignore overused and cliched phrases when we're hearing a story, much in the same way as we move about our house and we don't really notice the furniture that's always sitting there. It treats cliches like that. If we want to evoke emotional responses in our listener or our reader, we need to be really authentic and not hyperbolic. Exciting side note here, a team at Claremont Graduate University in the States identified oxytocin as the neurochemical responsible for empathy and narrative transportation. That is when you kind of get lost in a story and you start to emotionally resonate with the character. So these guys discovered that when oxytocin is synthesized in the brain, people become more trustworthy, charitable, generous, and compassionate. And how might you get more oxytocin flowing? Through emotional simulation, or listening to a story when your brain starts acting like you're experiencing those emotions yourself. So that's how we can become better storytellers, by using structure, colour, and emotions. Now, I actually firmly believe that to be human is to be a storyteller. Stories help us learn and retain information. They get our brains high on oxytocin, so we're better people. And most importantly, they connect us with each other. We all have a story. You all have a story, even if you're sitting there thinking that you don't. And I challenge you to go back through your memories and try and workshop a story that you might be able to share with somebody today. Thank you.